No one forgets their first encounter with an orc. Maybe it was Johnny Fivehead here from Lord of the Rings, or the first time you encountered an English tourist on holiday in Spain. It's not something you forget. My first encounter with an orc was seeing this guy on the front cover of Warcraft 3 when I happened to pick it up whilst browsing a game store as a kid. Ah yes, the good times, when you looked at the box to decide if a game was worth, well, your mum's money. When you didn't know if the game you picked up was going to change your life forever, or if it was Bad Boys Miami Takedown. Those days feel long gone now, but I still remember how seeing this orc for the first time made me feel. I was blown away. He looked mean, he looked cool. He was certainly in need of some serious dental care, but so what? All our heroes could use a bit of that. And he was on the front cover of the game, usually reserved for attractive men in shiny armour with perfumed hair and meticulously groomed eyebrows. You know, paladin players and that. Here was a big green fucker on the front cover of my game, and I knew that because of that, he definitely had to be the main character in the game, right? Or at least the big bad guy. Why else would he be front and centre? And here we come to the main thrust of this video. You see, the orcs of Warcraft aren't a generic evil race for the elves and humans to fight against like you see in every other fantasy game. On the contrary, these orcs define the game. They are its most recognisable characters. All you need to see is the neon green skin, the big axes and the shoulders wider than a fucking IMAX screen, and you know you are looking at a Warcraft orc. They make this game what it is. My name is Vulgrin, and today I'm going to tell you just why that is the case, what made these orcs so unique, and how Blizzard has changed them forever. In my last video I talked about how the Forsaken are my favourite race in WoW, especially Classic WoW, and it's true. Orcs though are a very close second, and again, it's the orcs of vanilla World of Warcraft that I love. Are you sensing a pattern here? To understand what makes them so interesting, and why they've changed, we need to look into the lore and culture of the orcs at the beginning of the game. Now if you want, you can watch this old video I did about the orcs years ago.
A long time ago, on a planet later sponsored by Monster Energy.
Actually, in fact, don't do that, it was fucking Garbo. Here's the synopsis. Someone at Blizzard clearly really loved Conan the Barbarian growing up as a kid, and thought that the movie with Arnie was the best thing ever. We're talking about the first movie, obviously, not the second. Behave yourself. I'm sure they especially like that scene with the tent and the witch. You know. Well, let's move on. The team correctly recognised that the thing which makes Conan so fun isn't that he's young, dumb and full of trenbolone, because he's not. Well, the trend part is true, but he's not stupid. What makes Conan interesting is that despite being a muscle-bound barbarian, he has a razor-sharp wit and a keen sense of honour and integrity. You see, we love the idea of the noble savage. A hero who hasn't been compromised by the softness and decadence of civilization, but who instead embodies the primal traits which allowed us to get to those comforts in the first place. Physical strength and endurance, agility, willpower, and yes, also honour. These traits are things that I think most people find appealing. It's why we love Vikings and Highlanders and people from Texas. The guys at Blizzard understood that if you took inspiration from all the tribal warrior societies on Earth, Gaelic clans, Germanic motifs, Slavic god names, Native American and African cultural themes, you got something really interesting. What took those ideas and launched it into space was the decision not to combine all of these themes in a human adjacent race in their game, but instead to use them on something different. Orcs traditionally are the big, dumb, stupid green guys who the heroes of the story fight against. It didn't start this way, of course. The orcs of Tolkien's Middle-earth are cowardly, diminutive, and inferior to elves and men in all ways other than in the extent of their capacity to do evil. Also, cannibalism. Well, I guess that's also evil, but you get the point. Things progressed from there with the D&D explosion and then Warhammer in the 80s, and from that point onwards, orcs were sealed in the minds of nerds across the globe as the hulking, club-swinging grunts, usually sitting somewhere in the middle of cannon fodder goblins on one side and anyone of actual importance to the plot on the other side in terms of threat level to players. It was the same in Warcraft at first, with the Orcish Horde being clearly the evil faction and having honestly very little nuance in the first two games beyond do you like your orc with an axe or a club. What led to the orcs being developed into something special was the very premise that has defined the Warcraft series, well, up until now. You see, you have the Alliance on one side and the Horde on the other, and you can play as both. You could play as the Orcs, which meant they needed development, especially for the third Warcraft game, because you can't make one of the best RTS games of all time if half of your story is fronted by numerous green variants of the Great Khali. No offence. Warcraft 3 was every bit as much of a game changer as WoW in my opinion. Mixing RTS and RPG elements, it had some of the best storytelling in gaming with a plethora of compelling characters. Obviously you don't have Warcraft 3 without Arthas, Illidan and the rest, that goes without saying, but this game is where we got Thrall and Rexxar, and it's where Grom Hellscream really comes into his own. The Manoroth cutscene alone is pure magic. 2 orcs facing down a pit lord to save their entire race. What could be more badass than that? And to remake the Horde into something new and virtuous, the orcs needed to be tempered, defined by more than just their warlike nature. In Warcraft 3, we see the beginnings of this. The return of shamanic beliefs, the honour and loyalty of brave warriors to their clans and war chief, the quest to finally find a home in Azeroth. Most importantly, the story of the orcs in Warcraft 3 is a story of redemption, of casting off shackles and being able to proudly say once again, this is who we are. Only one final ingredient was needed to make Warcraft orcs truly spectacular, a distinctive art direction, and if there's one standout feature of WoW which makes it instantly recognisable, it's the art style. I would characterise it as a combination of blocky, bold, low poly models mixed with a vibrant, hand-painted, almost comic book texturing style. Now, on a side note, I'm actually not a fan of many of the modern revamped textures which came out around WoD. I respect the desire to modernise assets first created in an era when people still used fucking fax machines, but I think a lot of the charm was lost, and many of these newer models, including the orcs, look simultaneously goofier than before, but also much too busy. I mean, look at this. This guy looks like he's trying to figure out to the nearest micrometer the exact diameter of the shit he's trying to force out, and from the look of pain on his face, it's probably on Bono levels. But the vanilla orcs are, in my view, one of the standout examples of that Warcraft 3 classic WoW era Blizzard art style. And it's not just the orcs themselves. Look at the buildings and the landscape around them. Vanilla Orgrimmar is one of my favourite places in all of video games. I used to love being there as a kid on a Friday night on my undead rogue, just hanging out in the drag at night time, waiting to get a group together for Razorfen Downs. Is there anything better than that? I bet your hearts are bursting with nostalgia right now. Orgrimmar in vanilla is colourful, it's bright, it feels like a large city with lots going on in it, but also expansive and untamed. I've always thought that the early WoW devs were massively inspired by the natural landscapes of the United States, which makes sense given that Blizzard is, after all, an American company. Questing through Durotar and visiting Org always reminded me of these far-off places in North America, like Utah, just with fewer Mormons. When you play vanilla WoW and you make an orc, you absolutely feel like you're continuing right off the heels of where you left Rexxar, Thrall and Vol'jin at the end of Warcraft 3. You're a young blood, setting forth to prove yourself in a dangerous, exciting land, and from the beginning the experience feels special. It feels different to the previous RPGs you've played. You're not in a forest with pixies and elves and fucking garden gnomes running around. You're in a red sandstone desert with mesas and bluffs. Your enemies are angry proto-bacon people and fellweed enthusiasts. From the beginning, you know you are in another world of strange creatures and vast, unexplored regions, but that's fine, because you are a muscle-bound orc, and if you aren't powerful enough yet to deal with a threat, then you know that one day you will be. It's excellent. This is classic WoW. This is my favourite game of all time. But then Blizzard went and fucked it up. Yeah, again, I know. Just like with the Undead, Blizzard felt a desperate need to advance their world and its story by the time Cataclysm came around. Like the Undead, their primary vehicle for accomplishing this with the Orcs was by focusing on the story of the faction leader. But unlike the Forsaken, this was not the same hero who had led them through the first 3 installments of WoW. the Orcs would have a new leader for Cata. Garrosh Hellscream represents perhaps the biggest missed opportunity by Blizzard in the history of World of Warcraft, and this walking chicken nugget probably deserves his own video, which I will make if you ask me nicely and subscribe to the channel, but for now, let's focus on what he meant for the Orcs. Garrosh had everything going for him as a new, significant Orc character in what was an already packed field. For one, he was the son of Grom, and who doesn't like Grom? Secondly, he was clearly a born warrior, which contrasted well against the shamanic thrall from the outset. Most importantly though, he was a Mag'har Orc, an uncorrupted native of Draenor, who had never set foot on Azeroth prior to the founding of the new Horde. There were so many different ways that Garrosh could have taken the Horde, an entity that he was still absolutely in the process of learning about when he was made Warchief by an absentee thrall. He was young, inexperienced despite his immense personal qualities as a warrior, but he commanded intense loyalty from his own people. No one knew for certain what would happen in his story, but there was no doubt that whatever Garrosh did, it would be interesting. And at first, Blizzard got it right. Garrosh killed one of his own allies in a duel, but only due to the machinations of an outside force. The whole episode made him look reckless and foolish, but simultaneously it confirmed that he would never seek victory through treachery. He said about engaging the Alliance in a bloody hot war, but again, in the context of the Cataclysm, this wasn't absurd. Despite being a massive Orc nationalist, he chucked one of his own Orc generals off a magic Tauren elevator as if the poor bastard had gone AFK in vanilla Thousand Needles. This last event marks the conclusion of one of the coolest quest chains in the game, by the way, and it shows that Blizzard still got things right after the end of the Classic era. Importantly, Garrosh killed that Orc general because he dishonoured the Horde through his genocidal actions. Garrosh learns from the spiritual Tauren chief whose family were killed by this general that compassion and mercy are every bit as important to honour as strength in arms. This is a different Garrosh from the one we see develop in Mists of Pandaria onwards. This was before he thought nothing of committing war crimes, well, apart from making the revamped Orgrimmar. That was a war crime as far as I'm concerned, but we'll gloss over that for now. Unfortunately, this Cataclysm era Garrosh, this nuanced character, it wouldn't last. Like with the Forsaken, Blizzard felt they had no option if they wished to advance their game but to reduce the Orcs down to their most basic, simplified elements that they were known for, being big and tough and violent, liking metal and spikes and red things. Garrosh led the way, going from being an aggressive yet charismatic and far from stupid leader to being a big dumb brute who just wanted to conquer the world, and experience some tentacle hentai along the way. The Orcs themselves, outside from actual player characters and a few NPCs, all followed suit, and before you know it, everything Orcish was plastered in this horrific brown spiky metal and promptly set on fire. Gone was that nuanced combination of animistic, tribal spirituality and noble savagery. Instead, if you were an Orc, you were part of an angry red war machine. Your only alternative was Thrall and his band of merry men, except even that wasn't what it used to be back in the day, because now Thrall was bald, wearing a sleeveless robe and altogether acting like he'd just been on a 10-month-long ayahuasca holiday. Like Sylvanas, Garrosh ultimately got his comeuppance without anything even resembling a satisfactory conclusion to his story, but for the Orcs, the damage was well and truly done. A race which once had such an interesting and distinctive visual and narrative design behind it is now just another angry Orc race variant. This weird industrial aesthetic still finds its way into every nook and cranny of Orcish culture in modern WoW, like a bad fart filtering its way through a poorly ventilated elevator. In many ways, the fate of the Orcs mirrors that of WoW itself, something which was once so vibrant and full of interesting and unique ideas, which hid behind an attractive eye-catching visual style, a deep reservoir of brilliantly constructed lore and characters, has now been stripped right down to its most reductive, infantile components in a mistaken need to appeal to a modern audience thought too stupid to appreciate anything beyond the most superficial of themes. If Blizzard ever does decide to make Classic Plus to expand on the content of vanilla WoW, something I don't even trust them to do at this point, then they need to remember what it is that makes playing an Orc so damn fun. It's being one of a handful of buff, bare-chested dudes out there in the heat with axes riding on fucking wolves. That's what Warcraft is all about, and I for one wouldn't have it any other way. Congratulations, noble sir! You made it to the end of the video alive and with your sanity intact. You must truly be a hero worthy of song. Your prize for making it this far is a free subscription to this YouTube channel. All you need to do is click the button which says subscribe. Makes sense, really. Would you like to hear my thoughts on other races in this wonderful game of ours? Perhaps you want to know about the best quests in WoW, or the best characters? Let me know in the comments below and I will do my utmost to oblige. Until the next video, friends, be well, bye bye.